things, but there are no textbooks or anything here for that.
Yeah, for sure. He's really good. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Kenny.
Hey, Alicia.
How are you? I'm glad the right link got to you.
So I'm gonna be here in the background. If you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, perfect.
And this session is recording already.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. I'm also, so I know it's 9:29. Ralph Mendez was bringing his class. So I'm just gonna send him a little message because I don't see them. So let me do that, and then I'll be right back on.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good
Hi,
morning.
Christiana. Good morning, Ronnie.
Good morning. Yes. How you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing good. We're doing well. We're getting the classes taught and all other kinds of stuff, you know.
I love it. You always do such a wonderful job with that, Ronnie.
Well, it's just I'm just honored to be able to do what I'm doing in these times, because
absolutely
times are like no other times in our lives. But when we look back after we get through this, we're going to find that we're much stronger and we're much more resilient, and then we'll have a greater appreciation for life altogether. So I'm really excited about what's ahead of us.
Absolutely. I think it's made people innovative too.
Mm-hmm.
Innovating things that maybe we hadn't thought of before. Or some people, this is what they're used to. I know Scott, speaking of innovation and online, I mean, Scott, you've done amazing things.
Yeah, and I'm saving an hour-long commute one way.
Yeah,
I gained 2 hours of productivity each day, if you want to look at it that way.
That's just a win. That's just a win. That's a win. That's the win right there.
I got up and went fishing yesterday before classes started.
Oh my goodness. Where'd you go fishing?
Well, I live in New Braunfels, so the Guadalupe River runs right
through. Oh,
there.
yeah. Okay. Man.
So, I get up at the same time. You got to get up in the 5 o'clock hour to do that. But
yeah, I've been up at 5 o'clock a few times in my life over my years in the military. So, yeah.
I love it. Y'all, I'm just sending a text to a faculty member whose class was coming, just to, ask them if they're coming. So,
okay.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
And then we can get started with our guest, Kenny and Christiana.
All right. Hey, Scott, what was your best place to fish in your life? I know you just didn't start fishing yesterday. So what was the best place you've ever fished?
I like to go to New Mexico.
New Mexico. Oh.
Yeah, and go up in the mountains and trout fish. I fly fish. So.
Oh, okay.
I like to go where.
So mine was when I was on active duty. I was stationed in Panama, and so we would fish in the lakes around the Panama Canal, and they have what they call the peacock bass. I don't know if you ever heard of peacock bass.
I've seen pictures of them. Yeah,
and it's that they're like, they fight so hard, and we fish with a straw, and we fish with a straw. So you cut a straw about an inch and a half long, and you slide it on your line, and you tie a treble hook to it. And then you put like a cricket or something on the end of it. And then we would throw the line behind the boat. And then the fish would come up and hit it. And then we would know, boom, this is where we need to go. We'd fish. We're pulling fish all out of there, and then when we caught from like 5 o'clock in the morning till about 9. 5 to 9. We were out of there by 10. We caught like 250 fish.
Oh man.
And then the guys on the bank would fillet the fish for like 10 cents a fish. So these guys were like filleting the fish and doing all of that. And then, so we brought back like 13-quart bags full of fish. And that was just, it was amazing. It was the best place I've ever fished in my life. And I look forward to getting back to Panama when everything's over to get to do some more fishing down there.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, it's 9:34, so why don't we start? And so we may have people joining us mid-session. So if y'all are okay with that. So I wanted to, this is my first international education event for this week.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I couldn't attend the others. So I'm very excited to be here. My name is Migdalia Garcia, and I'm from Northwest Vista College. And so this is a very important time for us. I think when we started International Education Week at Northwest Vista, we really had this desire of how do we promote culture in a meaningful way? How do we approach language and exchange and study abroad? How do we cultivate this global wisdom, right? Because so the panel was called Glocal. And for me, I really think that San Antonio, in some ways, is a small town, and in some ways, it's a hub and an intersection for a lot of different cultures. So I called it Glocal because I thought, well, there's skills that global skills to me, y'all, are everyday skills, right? So I wanted to share a video, and I know that this panel was a lot of it. I got a lot of response back from business faculty and accounting faculty and entrepreneur faculty because our guests today are in those areas talking about their experience and how culture and being culturally literate, I'm going to call it. Scott, you might have a better word for that. It is such a skill, and it will help us just in our everyday interactions and our business interactions. So I wanted to show a video, and you may have seen this before, but I want to show it. It's quick. It's a 1-minute video, and it's a Fortune 500 company. It's Coca-Cola.
Beautiful for spacious skies, por tus olas de granos ámbar, yo piscina sa kuti, sa ibabaw ng mga prutas. America, America, God shed His grace on thee. Or bahijare ke saath aaj tera cha, tu la mer bria. Berat tu verrière tir from sea to shining sea.
Any thoughts on the video? Any comments? I'll tell you a little bit more about it once we discuss it just a little bit. Any thoughts?
Yeah, those kids are going to step on those bottle caps and cut their feet. That's all. I was a lifeguard for years, so.
I love it.
I like the part where it's America, and it's the true America. America goes from the top of Canada down to, Tierra del Fuego, all the way down to Chile and Argentina, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I like about that video, it just shows how much of a melting pot the United States is. Just like Ronnie, I was in the military and traveled in a lot of different places. And sometimes you go to a different place and it's just like when I went to India, it was just primarily people from India, or when I go to my home country in the Philippines, it's just people, Filipinos. And so when you think about America, you just think about it being a melting pot of different cultures coming together. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Kenny. Any other thoughts, comments? So I think it does a good job, like you said, how what has been shared, the sentiments, that it does a good job. And this is what America looks like, right? This is the United States, that we do appreciate different cultures, that we don't have. English is not the only language spoken here. I will tell you all that it created a lot of controversy. The video created a lot of controversy. And some of the comments were about, we don't want the United States to look like this. We should have an official language. And so I just thought it was such an important message. And we actually talked to a woman who helped direct the commercial, and what she said was, we need people who are educated in global studies, in geography, in international business, because being culturally competent, relevant, having appreciation and understanding is good for us, for compassion and living in society. And it's also good for money. It's also good for companies. It's also good for profit. So I want to stop there, and I want to introduce our wonderful guest that we have with us today. And y'all, because there's not a lot of us, we can keep it, if it's fine with our panelists, as a conversation. So we thought of some questions beforehand, but if you also have questions to ask them, let's have it feel more of a conversation instead of how we originally thought of as a panel. Cristiana and Kenny, how do you feel about that? Would you be okay with that?
I love that. I prefer that.
Great. So we have Cristiana and Kenny, and I'm going to let them talk a little bit about themselves. I purposely did not have them give me bios because I think people do a much better job of talking about themselves than anybody ever could. But I want to say how much I appreciate them for sharing their wisdom and skill. We have somebody who is, Kenny is a VP at the Bank of San Antonio in HR. So he's doing a lot of the hiring and training in global competencies. And then we have Cristiana, who's an entrepreneur and CEO. And then what skills and competencies, and opportunities that they can impart with us today. So Cristiana, would you like to start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this point?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I've practiced my ways of really condensing it into meaningful timeline. So I grew up part of a military family. What brought me to Texas was Fort Hood. I was born in El Paso. We were just there for such a short time, I think just a couple of months, but my dad was stationed at Fort Hood. I went through many deployments, but that's how I landed here back in Texas. And I went to the University of North Texas in Denton, and with the entire vision to go to medical school. I had studied sign language in high school, had a friend who was both blind and deaf, and I wanted to be one of the first physicians to cater directly to the deaf community who could both use their language rather than an interpreter. And so I set my eyes on medical school. I studied biology and chemistry in college and was dead set on acing the MCAT and jumping right into med school. And between college and kicking off medical school, I gave myself a year to work, and I ended up working to practice my skills and really to figure out, did I actually really love medicine, or did I just love people? And gave myself a little bit of a gap year to really get to work. I hadn't worked in the medical field, and here I was getting ready to commit my entire lifetime to working. And I found a ER and trauma center here in DFW that was one of the busiest, and got to work. I was a medical assistant, a scribe, and an interpreter. I could sign and help the deaf community and practice those skills. And working some crazy overnight shifts, I met a physician who was building a company to do on-demand urgent care for families in DFW. So there's a doc in the box or an urgent care on every corner, but going to those places, especially now, really isn't convenient. So rather than jump into the medical field full force as a student and waiting many years before I could be really a decision maker in the healthcare organizations that I might be a part of, I decided to join a startup that would change how healthcare was delivered in DFW and beyond. And no business experience. I didn't even know what a startup was. I had never really, other than watching The Social Network about how they built Facebook, I really didn't have a ton of context for how apps were built or websites were built. And it actually didn't really matter so much. I had a dedication to passion or to patients and a passion for the patient experience that taught me everything I needed to know. The other things just it was learn as I went. Hold on. Oh, sorry, I had a call coming in here. And it was learn as I go. So long story short, we built that company in March of 2015. It was very Uber-like. We did on-demand urgent care, all delivered through a mobile app. And March of 2015, we launched, and we sold that company before December 2015. So I always joke it was not my jump into business. It was a catapult face down into the mud of what it is to build a company. And I was really young at the time, not a ton of experience, like I said, but I learned a lot really quickly. Fast forward a couple of years, I realized I have a love and dedication to connect people to products, and sometimes that means an app. I built several networking organizations that became one of the most recognized millennial geared organizations here in DFW. And I realized I'm really good at connecting people to products, people to people via networking, and now people to people on a dating app. And a very important I feel very socially responsible for the fact that I could, my platform can help people connect that might result in a marriage or a baby. So I realized it didn't really make sense to tell that story for a long time. I didn't know how to connect my healthcare experience to a dating app that I now lead called Vouch. And what I realize is healthcare patients and my daters don't really want that many different things. They want a transparent and clear experience. They want to know what to expect. And more than anything, they don't want to be scammed. And so going to an ER or online, no one wants to waste money or miss out on a positive experience if they can avoid it. And yeah, so I now lead a fast growing brand new dating app in DFW. I live here in Dallas, which you can see outside, and just up the street is Match.com, which is a powerhouse. They own obviously Match.com, they own Tinder, Hinge, all of the most popular dating apps are right here down the street. So I'm a little fish in a very big ocean here, but I'm so honored to be a part of this panel, and I can't wait to tell a little more tidbits about what I've learned along the way.
Excellent, thank you, Cristiana. Kenny, would you like to share? So be thinking of questions. Kenny.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Meg. It's an absolute honor to be here. So I guess I'll just start off with my journey. I think the journey is sometimes a really great way to start because you get to connect the dots. I'm born and raised here in San Antonio. Parents, first generation, born here from the Philippines. My parents are from the Philippines. Grew up on the east side of San Antonio, kind of in a low income area. I grew up in the East Harry's courts, which are no longer in San Antonio, part of the all the different growth that's going on there and trying to regentrification process. So, I was in the military after graduating high school. I was in the military, did 9 years in the Army. I did 3 different deployments to the Middle East. And I know Mr. Brannon was talking about his time in Panama. I was in a company called United States Army South, and I spent some time in Panama as well, and all of Latin America. Upon getting out of the military, you know, I was trying to find a job, and as I was trying to find a job, I kept running into some barriers because I didn't have any degrees, and although the military trained me, I didn't have any certification. So I had a harder time trying to find a job outside of the military. And so I went back to school because of the post 9/11 GI Bill, and I got an associate's degree in accounting. I got a bachelor's degree in ministry and theology, and then another bachelor's degree in business management. And part of the post 9/11 GI Bill, they give you some money for housing. So I decided to keep going to school because for me, it was a no-brainer. I go to school, you pay off my house. That's a win-win. And so I have an MBA in finance, as well as a master's degree in healthcare management. And I'm halfway done with my PhD in organizational behavior. And so today I'm the vice president of the Bank of San Antonio in human resources. But aside from me being in the bank, my heart was gripped a few years, or probably about a decade ago, when I went back to my mother's hometown place, and I saw all the different poverty there. And so in the Philippines, I started a lumber company, which we just, at the beginning of this year, we signed a contract with Honda and Nissan to kind of distribute all the cars in Southeast Asia. So I started a lumber company. I started a coffee bean company. I started a shark and fish oil company, a mining company, and a construction company. And just last month, I inked a deal, and I just started a banana plantation in the Philippines as well. We have 486 hectares out there, and we are creating a banana plantation out there. And with what we're doing over there, and here's where my heart got gripped. I saw that there was a lot of poverty, but I saw that there was a lot of homeless children out on the street. And so we started 2 orphanages and 13 churches over there. And the 2 orphanages and the 13 churches are self-sufficient by the 6 businesses that I started in the Philippines. And in these orphanages, we're teaching people how to be entrepreneurs themselves, so they can go out and see a need and try to fill it in a way. So we're teaching them business principles, but we're also kind of giving them a hand up. I'm a person that doesn't necessarily believe in handouts. I believe in hand ups, although it will take a handout. So I like to give a handout, but more so a hand up. And so that's what we're doing right now. But on a daily basis, I am the vice president of the Bank of San Antonio in HR.
Wow, incredible, Kenny. Both of you, Christiana and Kenny. And I didn't know that last part about Kenny. I didn't know that you also were, that you had so many startups and had a philanthropic side.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Kenny and Christiana. Do we have any questions at this point? Because if not, I can go on to my next question.
My first question is, Kenny, how many clones do you have to do what you do?
So
Incredible.
when I was am I on mute? Hold on. Let me see. Okay. When I was in the Philippines, I had went there because I also do a lot of motivational speaking, and I was really there for a speaking engagement. And when I was there for a speaking engagement, the people that kind of toured me around, showing me a lot of the poverty, kept telling me about the problems. And I love to hear everybody's problems. Some people don't like to hear problems. I look at problems as an opportunity. So I'm like, tell me all your problems. And so there was 7 people that toured me around, and I made all 7 of those CEOs of all the companies.
Nice.
Wow, I like it.
And so they run it, and I just get to have my name as there as the owner and founder. But I'm really hands off. Aside from since I do it here, I do a yearly audit of a lot of their work.
Incredible. Other questions? Okay, so let me go on to the next one. So in the context of what you shared, Christiana was a biology chemistry major. Kenny, you also mentioned that you had some healthcare and, business. What are some tangible skills? We talked about within the context of our global economy, in the context of our diversity, what are some of the skills that companies are looking for? So whether that's nonprofit companies, whether that's, Fortune 500, Luciana, whether that's your startups, what are some tangible skills that y'all are looking for in future employees, skills that have helped you to flourish in your current position? So again, some of that, how that cultural competencies and diversity played into that.
Oh, well, for me, I think a lot of the skills that I hadn't yet learned in school actually that made me maybe a good fit for some of the positions I've been put in. It was having a military background. And I know a lot of people in Texas have at least are around families who've had to be picked up and dropped off in new cities. And so being able to adapt was something that the military taught me, but I also realized that I had, it's not something that is unique to military families, but being able to adapt quickly, relate to people, jump into a conversation. It doesn't matter if it's something you're wildly, knowledgeable of, but being able to communicate. And what I look for when I'm hiring is less about the hard skills in some instances, especially in a startup. I always say you can't document hustle on a resume. And if you look at my resume, it's not that long. And if you maybe went back several years and compared me to other people in positions of leadership in, let's just say, the dating industry, I'm wildly unqualified for this position. But if you look deep into the roles that I've had, my whole entire focus is driving impact. And that goes back to the hustle that you just can't see on a resume. You don't know that I'm the first one to arrive to an event and the last one to be there cleaning and picking up, or that I'm hands-on with every element to make sure it's a positive experience. So for me, I don't focus so much on resumes. I focus more so on someone's passion and their dedication to continuing to learn and adapt. I think that people I'm most interested in hiring are not those typically who have the 30 years plus or 20 years, 10 years of experience, let's just say a marketing role. I want to talk to the people and the candidates who are always learning, keeping up with trends. They're not set in their old ways. You're adapting to new positions, changing with technology, especially in a landscape like we're in now, understanding the virtual environment and being prepared to adapt as you go. For me, somebody who's not someone I want to hire is a candidate who comes to me and says, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years and this is how I do it. And it doesn't matter what company I'm with. This is how my, kind of circle I stay within. That to me in the startup community or the startup environment isn't as ideal as somebody who's a lot more ready to roll up their sleeves and get a little gritty when it comes to building a company and being able to adapt. So I've only really had true experience in in a startup environment. I sold my first startup to a corporate entity, which totally changed the environment of the skill sets that were demanded of our team. So I knew that it did give me some insight into what startup versus corporate. And for anybody listening who doesn't know what that is, imagine you're on your own jet ski, speeding by on an ocean somewhere, building your own company. Selling it to a corporate entity is like trying to turn the Titanic, and we all know how that went. So it slows things down. It can change, and not necessarily always in a bad way, but it definitely changes the environment. I think because I had that military background and those skills to know that I need to be able to mold and move with the environment was really what led to my success in either capacity in the startup world or the corporate world. But I very much prefer the startup community just because I like giving people chances that they don't have the background that fits as a perfect match. I like working with people who have hustle and are eager to continue to learn.
Excellent, great, thank you for that. I see that we have a couple of questions in the chat, and we'll get to those. So, Penny, would you like to share what those tangible skills look like for you that you're looking in future workforce or people interested in changing careers?
Yeah, I think I can make it really, really simple. When we are looking for or building our workforce, I started this initiative, and I'm gonna say I didn't. This isn't an original, but I really liked it and I really studied it. And when I look for staffing our workforce, I look for hungry, humble, and smart people. And sometimes smart doesn't necessarily mean that you have more degrees than a thermometer. It could just mean that you don't give up. Christiana said a word that we use here a lot, and it's gritty. And we feel that if we can find somebody that's willing to grow through grit and curiosity, that's going to make for a really great employee. And so adaptability, as Christiana also talked about, is extremely important because we are living in some times where we just have to adapt. And with this ability to adapt, you're able to go through a lot of different change, and change is hard for people. And so if you can deal with change really well and be adaptable, I think you're going to be a really great person. And if you know how to talk about that, you know, when we see people interview over and over again, one of the things that I feel like I try to uncover is maybe you might not be the best interviewer, or maybe not, you might not be the best person to interview because your interview skills aren't the best, but I try to get to the root of a lot of things. And typically when we're looking at somebody that we want to promote and everything, if there's an issue, we always want to get to the root, right? Because if you want to see a different fruit or an outcome, you got to get to the root. And so when I look at the root of people, and I see, and for a lot of people in college, they don't have this long years of experience. So when I look at root, what made you, have you volunteered, have you gone through internships, and have you been able to show that you, although you might not have done the job, but you are hungry, you're humble, and you're smart, and you've done your due diligence on the job and what it takes to become successful in the job. And I think that really makes for a really great candidate. And one of the things is, me as an interviewer likes to see, and I saw a question come through there, and I'm going to try not to answer it with this question, but I try to make sure that everybody's not perfect. So if you have a story where you might have failed, but failed forward, that's an extremely important to me, because failure is a normal part of something that we're all going to have to encounter. But how do you fail? Do you fail forward, or do you fail right where you're at? Because if you fail right where you're at, it's easy to get stagnant. But if you fail forward, you're actually just building, you're stepping on stones that'll help you go further. So I think being hungry, humble, smart is a really big key. But just to echo Christiana, she did an amazing job at discussing this. But adaptability to change is extremely huge, and being gritty and curious is also a great characteristic of somebody coming into the workforce.
Excellent, great, thank you for that, Kenny. So let's get to a couple. We'll circle back in 1 second to a follow-up. So the first question we have is, Kenny, how does risk play in the success of your career? So you talked a little bit about it, and I can't see who the questions are from, y'all, so my apologies. So maybe your success both at the Bank of San Antonio and then with your startups.
Yeah. That's a great question, because I think that when I do a motivational speech, I always talk about, you have to have faith that you can do something, right? And I tell everybody that faith isn't spelled F-A-I-T-H. Faith is actually spelled R-I-S-K, risk, because sometimes you just have to take a risk, but also have faith in your experience, have faith in your direction, have faith in some of the things that the work that you've put into learning a specific industry. Before we signed all these deals with our lumber company to ship cars for Honda and Nissan all over Southeast Asia, I had to learn what the demand of lumber was. And that's why I started with lumber. I had to learn the demand of construction. But in learning that, it was a risk, because I had no clue about that. I wasn't a lumberjack. I'm not a handy person. So I had to learn it, but I had to take a risk because I saw a need and knew that it needed to be filled. And I saw that people weren't filling it. And I'm one of these people that sees a need and fills it, because if I don't, somebody else will, and might as well be me. But also, why hasn't this need been filled? And why is this a problem now? And so when I look at that, Although I might not understand it, I try to do as much research on it as I can, and I will take that risk if I do see that there is a need, because I won't take a risk if there's no need, right? I wouldn't take a risk to sell hamburgers when there's a lot of hamburger stands out there, and I don't even know how to make hamburgers. And so I always assess the risk and assess the need. And for me, if you find purpose in what you're pursuing and you're passionate about it, I think that takes you a long way. In my LinkedIn, in which I believe everybody in here, if you don't have a LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn right now. But my tagline was connecting people with their purpose and their passion to create a great career. And I think when you talk about risk, I look to see, am I passionate about it? Because if I am, I'll take that risk. Do I find purpose in it? If I do, then I'll take the risk. But also, I do my research, and I don't step into anything blindly.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Next question is for Christiana. So I'm going to read it to you. It was also in your chat. So you give your credit to your military traveling to your success, being in the military, or your family. Some students have the same background, but many have not traveled outside of 1604. Which is the large loop that goes around a city. How would you highlight the importance of adaptability for those students who have never traveled or see the importance of developing global skills?
And I love that question because it brings up a really interesting point. A lot of people actually have never left the homes that they were born in. I have a lot of family members who are from Tucson, Arizona, who have lived in the same zip code their whole lives. And I always found actually to be a little envious of that. I've always looked for consistency in my life, and I've never had it because I've always been on the move. And then I did it to myself when going into business and taking on crazy roles and different risks with startups. I haven't ever really had consistency in living in the same place. But it doesn't mean that you're unable to learn or have similar skills. Adaptability doesn't necessarily mean being dropped off in a new city and having to figure it out. It's being able for me to translate the skills of your experiences into the workforce. As an example, my love for people brought me into healthcare. What I loved about healthcare was providing a convenient, transparent, affordable opportunity with my first startup. How was it going to translate and adapt that? My passion's there for patients and people, and translate that into a dating app, which I know is wildly different than owning a plantation, a banana plantation, or churches. And it's a huge risk that I took, but I took it because I knew and I trusted in my ability to take the skills and my previous experience and translate it into what it means to be a reliable and safe dating platform. And I don't attribute that necessarily to my experience military child. Rather, I've lived it. I've looked at my own life. I've recognized when my mom or my grandparents or a family member goes to an urgent care or an emergency room. Do I want them to be scammed out of money? No. Do I want them to have as positive experience as going to the ER can be? Yes. Do I want to know that they're being taken care of? Absolutely. Same thing with the dating space. We all have a friend here who's probably found love, whether you know not online, and we'll just even take dating out of it. Being online on social media has unlocked a whole lot of different concerns about safety. When trying to translate my to the dating space, I realized I want the same things for my friends and my family. And let's just use LinkedIn, because a lot of us, and if we don't, like Kenny said, we should have a LinkedIn. Let's say you're trying to explore meeting up with somebody that you connected with on LinkedIn. Are they reliable? Is their profile accurate? Is their photo who they say they are? Do they have anybody vouching for them? What do their references look like? Do they have connections? And I realized it was less about my background in the military, and it was more so my ability to connect the things that I loved and connect it to a whole nother industry. So if someone, let's just say a student who's never lived out, far out from the one loop that they've lived around, let's say they've worked in the restaurant industry for years, but they're looking to take a step out into business. I learned more, and I've said this many times publicly, I learned more about being a good physician while working at Outback Steakhouse in Killeen, Texas, than I ever did working in the ER. I learned about patience and customer experience. I learned about listening and being able to type, listen, think all at the same time, being a hostess and a server in a restaurant setting. And I think sometimes it's hard to envision that on your own. And that's where the adaptability, being able to dig a little bit deeper, see what elements of your career path can connect to each other. And I feel like I should own part of Outback Steakhouse by how much I talk about how much I learned from the managers I worked with and the people I was around. You would think of I don't work at Outback Steakhouse now, but I cannot avoid the relation between what I learned about being good to people and customer service to what it means to be a good business person as well, and having leadership. So the really incredible part about where we're at in 2020, it's been a weird year, but if anything, it's shown you that we can scale our reach and expand our networks without ever having to leave the four walls of our room. And what I would challenge any of the students who are listening who haven't had the same background is to really explore stories of others. I feel like the lessons I've learned that have really helped me navigate situations that my family doesn't. I don't come from a family of business leaders. I come from a military family and teachers. When I said I wanted to start a business, my parents looked at me like I was absolutely insane. And how could I turn my back on going to medical school? It was very foreign to them. So I had to learn a lot of lessons through others. And I would challenge anybody who feels stuck or maybe that they haven't had enough experience to really dig into the stories of others. And it doesn't have to be the loudest guy in the room. I know Gary Vee is a very popular voice in the business community. It's typically not the loudest ones. It's the movers and the shakers that are actually moving behind the scenes. And I can put a couple of resources actually in the chat of people I've listened to and followed and read books about. It really helped me expand my own experience outside of what my background has been in. So I know there are a lot of people who haven't had for me, I used to envy those who'd never left a zip code, but I understand that that's the case for many people. And especially right now, we're very, I don't want to say sedentary, that's not the word, but we're kind of confined. We can't travel quite as much. We can't connect with people as much, but I would really empower those to do that virtually, dig a little deeper, ask a lot of questions. And I've never reached out to a potential, I would say a mentor or someone to interview and been turned down. And so I would challenge those to make that LinkedIn page and start connecting with people. I'll put my profile here. I've gotten more job offers and more opportunity by just having a really strong LinkedIn page. Again, although a short one, I've really been an advocate for highlighting the passions that I have. And sometimes it has nothing to do with work.
Excellent, that's wonderful. So we have a two-part question from Scott Walker. So Scott, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, so this is for either Christiana or Kenny, right? Yeah. So I teach at Northwest Vista College, and I teach also in a interdisciplinary leadership doctoral program at another university. And I live in academia. That's my little bubble. I've been in it for 22, 23 years. So this is really exciting to get to actually talk to people who are doing the hiring. I'm really interested in students' marketable skills from doing study abroad. And I think they acquire so much that it's really hard to articulate. But one of the things that I've been studying and presenting on and writing about is often in higher education, we look at marketable skills as this kind of, it's generic. Everybody's got the same ones, and we can do a workshop, next week and train students in grit or whatever. So that's the first part of my question I'll add to that. There's another paradigm called the cultural capital paradigm that says these skills are dependent on disciplines. And I think, Christina, you mentioned that if you're in a startup, you need these skills. If you're in the corporate sector, you need these skills, and they're different. And I'm looking at it from, how do I work with students to make them more marketable? Should it be in this kind of generic one type of thing for everybody, or should we be defining by our disciplines. You know, people in English are doing this and people in business are doing that. And I teach environmental science and geography, and we should be doing another thing with our students. What do you think about that?
Can I go first? I can talk to you from a big company standpoint and then a small company standpoint. From a big company standpoint, when we hire, one of the first things that we challenge managers to do is we challenge managers to look at the competencies of the specific job. And I think knowing what those competencies are for a job is going to be really, really high, because, you know, to get into the door, your resume gets you into the door, right? And so how closely it fits to the job description is probably what's going to get you through the door, mostly because we all use a system now. And in my system, it spits me out A candidates, B candidates, and C candidates. And it's closely based on how close the resume looks to the job description itself, right? And then then we have all these key core competencies that we're looking for. So like in the finance world, I'll tell you this, but what I'm talking about is big company. I'll go little company here in a little bit. But since the finance world is where I'm in right now, so when I look at a credit analyst, I look at somebody competencies that are geared towards analytics, right? Somebody that knows how to comb through data, who knows how to do pivot tables, who knows how to do, I guess, VLOOKUPs and all these other things. And so those are some of the key competencies. And so I think one of the big key competency or key things to know when somebody is looking for a specific job, more so in the big company, is those key competencies and how they can talk to it, right? Because you can say that you know how to do this, but can you kind of dissect how to do a VLOOKUP? Or can you dissect how to analyze empirical data? Can you do this properly? And then from a smaller company standpoint, I actually step back a little bit from the core competencies, and I'm actually going back to it now because we just did a merger and we're growing into a bigger company now. But as a local community bank, I was really looking for somebody that didn't necessarily have those key competencies, but somebody that I can really train to do those key competencies or have some type of experience into it. But it was a little bit more structured in a bigger organization as opposed to a smaller organization. In a smaller organization, you might not have all the key competencies, but I like you in a few different aspects, so I'm going to go with you. And in a bigger organization, I don't have that luxury to say, hey, look, I'm going to take the risk on that candidate. But from a smaller company, I can take all the risks I want to. But for students that are looking to go into bigger companies, they need to learn the key competencies of that specific job and know how to talk relevant experience to that, even though they might not have direct experience to that. And then from I think a smaller company feel, you just really need to interview really good.
Okay, go ahead, Christina. You turned your mic off. So.
Oh, it's okay. I was just gonna say I share a lot of the same mindset that Kenny has. I don't have as much experience in a big corporate setting or a large company. But what I will say is that some of my favorite hires that I've worked with, either through internships or through part-time or even contract work, like I said, I kind of push the resume to the side and I really look a little bit more about portfolios, especially a lot of the roles I'm hiring for are heavy either in app and web development or in marketing. And a lot of students haven't had time to have an internship, or they've had to work and maybe that's in and out of marketing. And for me, the things I've really enjoyed and I feel like the people I've helped really elevate in their career through internships, which I know a lot of students, I know some are required, some aren't, but a lot of the work that I looked at for students who had never had an internship fresh out of college, I really asked them to show me some of their past work if they had it. And I think if I was a teacher or professor I'd be really trying to think about how to help my students take their skills, and it could be geography or it could be marketing, how to take what they're learning in the classroom setting and really put it into a real life feel. I know that seems so obvious and cliche, but what type of case studies and work could they share? A lot of the students that I speak with, especially on more on the marketing and business side, just as an example, I challenge them to build a brand that doesn't exist. I want to see what your social media could look like. Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to work with an intern or through another company through an internship, but build a brand in your free time. I would say once a quarter, I challenge myself to create a new company that I probably won't ever launch, but it's my way to remember what it's like to get down to the grittiness of how do I come up with a name and how do I think of a logo and how do I think about messaging? Because sometimes it's really easy for me to get set in my ways and not challenge myself that way. And so some of my most meaningful hires have come from students who have been able to take, again, translating their experience in school to what it is they're passionate about, and then furthermore, what it is they want to do in work. And one of my favorite resumes I've ever received, I talk about throwing resumes away, but I actually really do like them when they're well thought out. I had a student break her resume up, and I actually think, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a new style of resume. I can't remember the exact name of it, but she showed me not only what she has done work-wise and what she's learned in school, but she also told me a little bit more about who she is as an individual. And so her, and it was mirrored off of the CEO of Yahoo previously published her resume, and she had a pie chart of how she spent her free time. And I saw similarities in the girl's resume I just reviewed this year. And she showed me a little bit more about not just her skills in school and her past experience, but she told me a little bit more about what she's about. And in terms of creating more marketable candidates, it was a really unique way for me to see not only what is she interested in school, but how does she spend her time? Is she spending her time learning? Is she spending her time sleeping? Is she spending time with family? Is she paying attention to social causes and impact? And it was a new take on a resume. And before a resume, I think, again, to say if I was in your position, I would really want to help my students not only explore those core competencies of future roles that they're looking at, but how can they create tangible products and materials that they can showcase in the future with or without an internship. And like I said, some of the interns I've hired had never had a work experience in their life. And I was teaching them a lot about just having to fill out new paperwork, new employee paperwork. They really wowed me with not only what they were about while they were in school, but what they're about now.
Okay, I think you answered the second part of my question then, which is going to be, how do we demonstrate that students are adaptable, hustle, hungry, humble, and smart with grit? And it sounds like almost like portfolio-based learning might be the way to go about it. I have my 2 latest classes I've developed, students put everything on a blog where the world can see it. So they could hyperlink to that. And now Christiana could see it, for example, and see what they're doing when they go through a case study or they write a report, as opposed to just coming up with knowledge. Okay, I'll stop now because I have a lot more questions, but I'll leave it to some people.
That's why I like conversations like this, because you're a megaphone to many students. You could advocate for companies like ours, perhaps, about what we are looking for. And like I said, I don't have the 10 plus years of wisdom in that environment, but I will say the landscape of hiring is changing. I live here in Dallas. The AT&T headquarters, my internet is so slow considering that I can stare at AT&T right here across the way. AT&T has been known to bring in tech talent from out of Dallas. We're right here, and we've got thousands and thousands, millions of people here, and still we're recruiting out of Texas to bring great tech talent here. So one of my favorite initiatives that I've started in the last years was a project called Millennials for STEM, where we were really helping students in schools back up their STEM programs and have access to better computer systems and to get them exposure to coding. It is crazy to me that we're recruiting tech talent in this really fantastic big city when we have so many students who are capable and are interested in learning. And it was again, going back to more tangible projects, we were giving them access through our nonprofit to get a, every kid I see now has a phone. Why not teach them how to build an app? Or if they're sitting on their computers, why not teach them that they could build their own computers? And it's been one of my favorite projects, but it has blown me away with the fact that big cities still struggle with hiring the right talent, and they're not doing enough digging in their own communities to find it.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for both of those.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask another question from an audience member. Crystal, would you like to ask your question? Would you like us to read it? Would you like to read it?
Oh, I can ask it. Thank you.
Oh, excellent.
So my curiosity is you were both kind of talking about the hiring and what you look for and some of the challenges and things of those natures. I'm kind of not really your traditional student, quote unquote. I started college right out of high school, went for a few years. In one of the summers, I got a job with Walmart Stores Incorporated, and I left 21 years later. So as soon as I left, I was a single mom, and that's a big reason as to why I left the company. It was just the hours were so demanding. So I left the company and immediately went back to school. I completed the remainder of my bachelor's and went on to my master's degree, which is in management and HR, ironically. So I have a ton of experience with Walmart in all different types of aspects. I mean, from cleaning the floors to hiring and terminating to merchandising to managing hundreds of people. But as an older individual, that presents a challenge. I'm now in education. I work for the district office here in Alamo Colleges, which is a huge difference from retail. But it's very hard to relay that on a resume. I mean, I know the resume is supposed to really capture the attention in the first 10 seconds that they're reading it. But for the most part, they read it and they see, oh, okay, well, she has 20 plus years with Walmart. She's obviously older. She's not going to adapt to change. She's already set in her ways, things along those lines. So my question to either or both of you is, how do I relay that I still have that grit, that I'm still wanting to challenge myself, that I still have knowledge, that I'm willing to change and do the different things that it would take? Because as much as I love education, I don't know that I want to stay in it for the rest of my life. I've got other things that I want to do. So I want to be able to relay that so that I can open up more doors.
I think I can answer that because I feel like I see that every day when I comb through resumes, and you're correct. I mean, given the times right now, I'm seeing, like, for every position I post, I'm seeing like 300-400 resumes for every position, and so you're correct, and it has to grab the attention of that. But we are looking at diversity and inclusion in a lot of stuff, and some people don't know this, but the federal government, we have to turn in an affirmative action plan to the federal government every year, and on that affirmative action plan, we do have to show levels of diversity when it comes to race and stuff like that. We have to show a diversity in ages. And so just wanted to show, put that out there as a background as to something that we're going to get audited on anyways. And so to couple that with making sure that you have a resume that catches the attention. And, you know, one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of people do, and I think that I might've got this from the class at Northwest Vista when they were talking about resume writing, is to put a lot of the relevant stuff up front. And so that's really the first thing that a recruiter will see, and then start listing like your time frames and all this other stuff. Because sometimes when I'm looking at 400 resumes, I'm just looking at what's relevant to what I'm talking about. And sometimes it isn't until the interview where I actually am like, oh man, you've been there at 20, because we're trained now not to look at race. We're trained not to look at age anymore. And so I think and again, there's probably still some biases out there, but for an organization like mine, we're really looking at relevant experience and also what have they done. If you don't have experience, what have you done out in the community that also kind of mirrors a lot of that stuff. And so I would say to kind of look at all the different styles of creating a resume. And I did learn this at Northwest Vista. Sometimes you can put your most relevant stuff that has to do with the job up front, and then start listing your years of service in a certain place. And sometimes and a lot of times, if we continue to have an influx of resumes, I'm really just looking at that, and I'm not looking at the time period that you spent at a Walmart or something like that. I want to know and see that you have relevant experience, or you have something that kind of parlays into that experience, and that you're willing to do it. And we can talk about all the other stuff in an interview.
Crystal, do you have different resumes for different positions that you're, or I guess let me back up. What do you think you're interested in doing next? And this might help me up the next part of my question.
Well, my biggest goal is travel, ironically. And most people don't want jobs where they travel because they feel like it takes away too much. But I've done my job, as a single mom. I raised my son. He was in the military, just recently got out. So thank you both for what you do, because being in military and military family, I totally understand the sacrifices. He has just recently got out and completing his first year at Vista and moving on. So my job with him is done. I want to focus on myself, and I want to travel. Being with Walmart for years, obviously merchandising is a huge plus of mine, but that's difficult unless I just really want to get back into retail. But I have found that I absolutely love recruitment. So for me, being able to recruit, whether that be, management candidates or someone cleaning the floors, it doesn't really matter. But that's kind of my goal, is to get into recruitment. So to kind of vaguely answer the question you began with, I don't literally have a ton of resumes in my computer, but what I do is I tend to tailor the resume to the job that I'm looking for. I'm trying to highlight those deals, but I mean, again, I'm kind of old school. I guess I didn't realize that people had the opportunity to rearrange their resume to where they had the most relevant experience to be first. So
real quick, before you answer, Christiana, Crystal, if you wanted to be a recruiter, I work with a lot of different agencies that are always looking for recruiters because of the turnover of recruiters. And so if you wanted to be a recruiter, please shoot me your resume, and you can get my information from Mig. But I can help you out if you wanted to be a recruiter, because I use a few vendors myself, and they're always asking me, do I know any great recruiters or people that want to get into recruiting? So if that's a path that you want, then please let me know.
Look at this, getting job connections. That's great.
I was going to say the same thing, that if you'd like, what I was going to mention about the resume is that when it comes to recruiting, because you have experience through multiple roles and the 20 years that you were working, I think you have a good eye for the hustle for great candidates that might not fit the most obvious criteria. And I want to help you find a way to really maximize or capitalize on that, or showcase that on a resume. So I'm going to send you my email too, because I want to see what you have. And then I have a lot of friends in the recruiting space, and I may just ask them to take a look at it and say, what would you be looking for here, and get some feedback. Because I know that it's one thing to give hypotheticals, but it probably is more helpful to give you some real world advice.
great. Thank you so much, both of you.
I know that Alejandra had a comment, and then I have a follow-up question after Alejandra. Please, Alejandra.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. I know we're over the time now, and unfortunately came late for this session that was very important for us in the international office. I see some new faces, and this topic is the most important topic right now that we are discussing. I know Scott Walker and Ronnie have heard me talking about, and you, Migdalia, also, about what we are doing to renew and refresh some of the programs, and also to bring new programs that can highlight for the students these global competencies, like the Alamo Global Student Distinction. We're very excited for that one, and we are also very excited because we are bringing now an internationalization of the curriculum committee, and we're taking, I think, strong steps in that direction. Now with Alamo experience, our students are going to be able to carry with them these competencies, these experiences, and prove them to their employees. But we are in that stage. We're very well advanced, but I would love continue this conversation. And Migdalia, if you can send me contact information for the registrations, and you're willing to come, so you learn more a little bit about Alamo Global Student Distinction and where we are, because we have analyzed global competencies. We feel that it's true, they should be connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion at heart. I mean, we believe that global competencies can translate into marketable skills, but can also influence a positive culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they are not separate, and there's nothing in between them. I think for an employer standpoint, it's very beneficial to see that they're bringing on board someone that has these competencies, because of the two aspects. Marketable skills, yes, it's very important, but also they bring these values or this culture to their organizations. So I think these global competencies should be in the process of being revalorated, reassessed, and they need, in this world, in this time, they need to be, I think, revalorated. So that's my intervention, with an invitation for anyone in this great team to join us to continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alejandra. And really that was for my, that was really my comment / question. You know, we think global competencies look a certain way. You know, Kenny, you talked about a machine's looking at these 400 resumes. You know, are there keys? Scott, this goes to Scott's question. You know, if I am a student and I've studied abroad, or I do have a passion for travel, or I've traveled extensively, you know, what would be the key competencies that I could put on my resume, or what do you all see as the skill that, you know, because now we all don't have Ronnie and Scott as instructors, right, who are maybe coaching us on what to write on a resume if I have done a study abroad, or if I have traveled extensively, or if my family was in the military, right? So do you have certain terms that you look for that you would put on your resume, you know, for someone like Crystal, or, you know, that you're a global, you're open to global opportunity?
I think I'm looking less for certain terms necessarily, not specific terms, but more so it's a craft. I think writing a resume is a tough job to do for anybody. But one of the things I look at is how someone can succinctly and clearly recap what they've done. So if there was a study abroad program, or let's say they had an experience working, I don't know, insert any company, their ability to recap and highlight the impact that either that experience had on them, or they were able to impact the company. That's what I look for. And that's where I joke about my short resume. But if you look at my resume, I jump into companies within 2 years, we sell the company. And that means we're building, we're growing, we're rapidly seeing opportunity to expand so much that another company may come in. So my whole resume, my theme, if you will, is impact in short periods of time. So for me, it's less looking for terminal, like certain terms or key phrases that I'm looking for. It's more so the ability to recap and highlight impact driven during that time frame. For a study abroad experience, I think it'd be really nice to include that, but then reference either languages learned, experiences, if they were able to lead any element of the study abroad program. I want to know impact. I guess that's my whole theme for this entire discussion is not necessarily which companies you work with. Someone asked about how important it is to have previous job experience. It is important, but again, it's impact driven, whether that's in a classroom setting, an internship, or a study abroad program. I want to see that.
Thank you, Christiana. Kenny, any?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Christiana said because she's amazing and smart. And that word impact is really, really big. One of the things that I teach to my next level leaders is intent versus impact. And sometimes we can look at the intent of something and intend to do something so much that we fail to look at the impact. And a lot of times a recruiter, they want to see the impact that you made. And so that was an amazing point that Christiana made. Another thing that I would say, if somebody's looking to utilize their work experience from, or I guess them being a student abroad, is you really need to look at jobs that are really driven towards having a degree, because there are some jobs that I have that don't require a degree, and I don't ever even get to look at that study abroad piece because I'm not focused on having somebody with a degree in a specific position. I actually started off in Dallas in a place, city called Plano, and there's a company called Ericsson, and when we would look at resumes for certain positions, we would be looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree. And when I was looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree, that study abroad was huge. But when I was looking for somebody that didn't really need a bachelor's degree, that really just needed certifications, I really didn't ever take a look at, did this person study abroad, and that really didn't give them a foot up. And so I think it's really the impact of what relevancy of the job and the requirements of the job to me, including that, or that being something that I extremely want to highlight. And to Crystal's point, if she's willing to move, there's so many companies that are looking for that. And the problem that they see is that people aren't willing to move. And so people that are, that could be a plus for certain positions. But again, it's knowing what you're passionate about. It's knowing what your purpose is about, and then finding a company that you know that you'll be a really great fit for, right? And I tell this to everybody that interviews, and hopefully this helps somebody. If you are interviewing at a company, you might be a good fit for them, but they may not be a good fit for you. And so you also have to look, is this going to kind of help me and push me towards my purpose? Is this going to push me towards my passion? And after I take a look at that, I need to look at the job requirements, because is my study abroad even going to be relevant to them? And so that's something that I would just like to point out.
Yeah, excellent. Good tips. And like Alejandra and so many said, this was a great session. I think that you all provided some wonderful insights and very concrete, tangible things that we need to be thinking about. I wrote down so many of the catchphrases. I loved them. So thank you for, imparting your wisdom with us and your experience. This was very helpful. So Christiana and Kenny, we appreciate you being with us. And I know, y'all, that there are some questions that we didn't get to. And if our brilliant panelists are up for it, I can send the questions to them. And then they can answer. So if you want to put your email address. And now I want to turn it over to Alicia, because like I said, when we opened, this is an event as part of international education. And so we wanted to honor the time, space, and celebrate all the wonderful components that make up international education. So Alicia.
Thank you all so much for attending this session. I think that these global competencies are so relevant to our virtual world right now. I think everybody's definitely trying to see how can we get more globally connected in a time where we cannot physically travel. So I want to thank everybody for attending. And I also want to let everybody know that we are having a raffle. So I'm going to randomly select a participant right now. And if you get selected, we would be emailing you for your mailing address, and you're going to be receiving a box called Universal Yums. And it's a box with many different international treats. So Christina Pandaroo, congratulations. You have won this box, and I'll be emailing you later today.
Yay, Christina. I love it.
Congratulations. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Fun.